Hello, good morning, everyone. I am so excited to be with you here today on this beautiful Monday morning. I'm going to start off today with a quote from our distinguished guest to get us started in thinking about healthcare and what's happening in medicine. And so the quote is, 25 years in emergency medicine teaches you this: the system isn't broken by accident. It's designed exactly as we built it. So fascinating text to study there. Today we are joined by the wonderful Dr. Ellison, who is a board-certified emergency medicine physician, co-founder of the Healthcare Reinvention Collaborative, certified resilience trainer, something that we all very much need right now in this year, 2026. And she is somebody who has really stood in the heart, the controlled chaos of that emergency room and in the controlled chaos of all of our healthcare system in progress, and has looked at how can we design the system in a better way, how can we create change, how we can create lasting change. And so Dawn, thank you so much for being here with us this morning. I'm really excited to talk with you.
Thanks, Emily. I am just so pleased to be with you today. Emily's one of my favorite people in the world. So
Yay, it's a love fest. It's a Monday morning love
great
fest.
to have a conversation in front of everybody.
So tell me about the moment where you started to think, was it a sudden moment where you're like, I need to do more to change this healthcare system in your career? Or was it a gradual sort of boiling of the frog that got you to create this like second career in healthcare transformation?
Yeah. So, I kind of started out in advocacy early on when I was 17, a
Oh my
senior in high school. I was 1974. You can calculate the age if you want.
God.
And I organized D-Day for our high school. And D-Day was a statewide campaign for helping people to quit smoking. So I made up a bunch of little cards and got them to people who were smokers, and they committed to quit smoking for 1 day. This was the D-Day campaign. I
Mhm.
had somebody from American Cancer Society come in and talk about how to quit smoking. And I guess that was really where I got hooked. I found out a few years later that one of our science teachers, who was in my mind as a 17-year-old, was an older guy, quit smoking for good on
Wow.
that day. And that just, wow, I made a difference, and that really excited me. And so, that wanting to make a difference started early on.
Before
Um,
medicine, your advocacy
yeah,
goes back
before
even
medicine.
further.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, along the way, there's always that core drive to make a difference, I think, in most all of the
Mm,
work that I have done. I got involved in the Mankato Area Smoke-Free Coalition.
mhm.
Back before Minnesota was smoke-free, we got Mankato smoke-free, and then the state went on to become smoke-free in restaurants and bars. That was the
Mhm.
initiative. That was all very rewarding. And part of why it was rewarding was we had a lot of different voices
Mm,
involved in pushing that effort, and that's
mhm.
how it happened. It wouldn't have happened with, one physician on a soapbox saying
Yeah,
this needs to happen, right? It has to
right.
be a real community effort. It needs to be a collaborative effort.
Mm.
So, it really, I guess it was sort of a boiling frog. It's always been at the core of what I do.
Yeah. And then how, medicine and medical education can feel very isolating sometimes, maybe kind of singular from what I've heard from many people, that you feel, you're very much competing with other people around you. But it seems like you emerged from medical education intact, still being you, still being the advocate and the community organizer. Was it like a pause, do you think, or did you continue that advocacy focus even through your medical education?
Well, I certainly advocated for us residents during my residency
Mm. Uh-huh.
program. We were, we were adult learners and we wanted to be treated as adult learners.
Mhm.
And so I think I was one of the folks that spoke up and said, could we do these things differently? It was difficult because I don't know if it's, this is sort of stereotypical, but my
Mhm.
residency was on the East Coast.
Mhm.
And I felt like most people thought everything was fine just the way it was. Thank you very much.
Mm,
And coming
mhm.
from Minnesota, I didn't have that. I mean, I've always wanted to improve things, change things, and
Yeah.
so yeah, for sure, I was doing it then too.
Yeah. What kinds of things
Yeah.
did you advocate for?
Well, just like I'm trying to remember, mostly it was things like, time off. And this was back when they were just starting to regulate how many hours in a row
Mm,
residents could be on call.
mhm.
And, I think back then, and maybe it's now too, I don't remember, but they came up with this idea that we shouldn't work more than 80 hours a week. And if you talk to anybody outside of medicine, they're like, 80 hours a week? That's
Yeah.
ridiculous,
On your
right?
feet, running around, yeah,
Yes,
doing extremely
yes.
stressful work.
Making very difficult decisions,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So some of that, um,
Mhm.
just, should we be up all night and then be required to sit in lecture hall all morning? I
Mhm.
mean, people are falling asleep. Let them go home and sleep, things
Right.
like that.
Oh, I love that.
So, yeah.
Well, it's such a, I think, a little stereotypically emergency medicine too, because the idea is the skill set there being so focused on triage and identifying the problem and finding the solution and kind of that rapid turnover. Was that part of what appealed to you in that kind of medicine?
It's interesting because I think I have a different reason for going into emergency
Mm,
medicine than most
mm,
emergency medicine docs. I went into medicine because I heard stories from nurses about patients, and the
mm,
stories that they told intrigued me. I went into emergency medicine because I feel like when people come into the emergency department, they're in crisis,
mm,
at least what they perceive as crisis.
mhm,
And to me, that was an opportunity to educate. When
mm.
they're feeling vulnerable, they're coming to you for help. You can say, hey, how much are you smoking? Back then it was, are you wearing your seatbelt? I mean, there were a
Yeah.
lot of people that were not wearing seatbelts back then. And, when I first came out of residency. And so I really thought it was an opportunity to educate people about the lifestyle choices that they make and how those impact their health.
Wow.
It's
So
not
you
the
saw,
it's not the typical ER doc, I don't think. I'm
I
not
love that
I'm
though.
not the adrenaline junkie.
Yeah.
Not
I mean,
really.
as somebody from a communications and PR background, my expertise is in how do you create change? How do you change somebody's mind? How do you have them
Mhm.
think about something in a different way? Some might say, a dash of manipulation. I like it actually, right? I mean, if you're doing it for good, right? And that is so fascinating to think about that emergency department as a place where people's hearts and minds might be unusually open in that moment.
Yeah, right? I don't know.
Wow. Oh, that is so fascinating. And so then, of course, you turned your attention to your colleagues, right, at
Mhm.
some point and
Absolutely.
started thinking about how do you build leadership. Tell me about that journey and what you tried to do there.
Yeah, so I had my aha moment for that
Mhm.
was I had a patient with a cervical radiculopathy, which is a very painful condition
Mhm.
where someone has pain in their neck radiating off and into their arm.
Mhm.
And this was a stoic southern Minnesota farmer. But he'd been in excruciating pain for weeks. And so this was back when we were first starting to learn how to use MRIs. And in the emergency department, because that was such an expensive tool, we had to ask for permission from another colleague in order to get somebody set up for an MRI. He didn't need one emergently, but I'm that doc that likes to help the next doc that's going to see the person be set up for success. And so I could call neurosurgery, I could call neurology, I could call radiology, and the neurosurgeon on call was new to our community. And so I decided to take the opportunity to introduce myself to him and to get his permission to go ahead and order this MRI. So they get him on the phone for me. And I have been out in practice for 10 years, so I know how to talk to a surgeon. You get to the point. You don't, beat around the bush. And so I very concisely welcomed him to the community, introduced him to myself, and then went on to succinctly present the patient to him. First thing he says to me is, just because you have a surgeon on call doesn't mean you call me for every medical patient in the emergency department.
Okay. Great.
First pregnant pause, right? and I responded, not ideally, but I responded by saying, Dr. So-and-so, this is the first time we've ever spoken, and this is how you're going to talk to me. He went on to talk about the natural course of cervical radiculopathy, never really gave me what I needed. So I hung up the phone with him. I got somebody else, took care of the patient, and then got off that phone call and then spewed bile to whoever would listen to me, right? Because this is what you do, right? We're frustrated and we just vomit. And, but that was my aha moment. I, got off that call and said, what can I do about this? Because we ER docs get shat upon by our colleagues a lot. That wasn't the first time. It wasn't the last time. How can I better communicate, be a patient advocate? There's that advocacy piece again, because that is the role that I took in the emergency department, was my patient's advocate. How can I do that effectively and, not end up at the end of the day, crushed because somebody hung up on me, right? And my reputation has been trampled on and so forth. So about that time, I got a brochure from the Bush Foundation describing the Bush Fellowship, the Bush Medical Fellowship that they at that time were offering. And what that was an opportunity for me to improve my skills so that I could give back to my community. And so what I decided to do was become a coach, improve my communication skills, particularly with respect to healthcare. I was qualified in Myers-Briggs. I learned about educating adults through the ASAP teaching fellowship. I pulled all these pieces together, leadership courses, so that I could step into that role of helping people like this neurosurgeon communicate better with your colleagues. The real tragedy with that whole little interaction is 2 months later, he was gone.
He left.
He was asked to leave. He kept butting heads, right? Butting heads with people. And that doesn't work when, medicine is a collaborative effort, right? We're not meant to be adversaries. And so I tried to pull together those skills that would help me help others see how collaboration can work in healthcare, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And it seems, do you feel like when you started, focusing on those skills and the collaboration and the leadership, did the changes that were happening in healthcare make that harder or easier, right? The way that medicine was evolving at that time.
Yeah. So, I wouldn't say it made it easier,
Yeah.
because, so there's something called fair process, which was written about by Harvard Business Review back in the early 2000s.
Mhm.
And that's simply a consultative decision-making process,
Mhm.
which to me is leadership 101. It's
Mhm.
basically, you've got a decision-making group, you engage your stakeholders, right? The people who have expertise or are being impacted by a decision, you
Mhm.
engage them and get them invested in a decision-making process. You make the decision as a decision-making group. You go back to those stakeholders. You explain the decision, right? This is all leadership 101 that
Mhm.
doesn't happen.
In
It
medicine.
just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
People talk all the time about buy-in, right?
Mhm.
So, my knowledge of change is within healthcare organizations for the most part until I
Mhm.
stepped into HRC. So this buy-in phrase, we need to eliminate that,
Mhm.
because that sounds like coercion, doesn't it?
Mhm. Mhm.
And really, you need people to be invested in the decision. You
Mm.
don't want them to buy in, you want them to be invested in it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Want
a
it to be
subtle
their
difference.
decision as well. They're not just saying like,
Right.
"Okay, you can do that. That makes sense." But they're saying,
Yep.
"I am with you."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Because in medicine, you don't know what the outcome of that decision is going to be. There is
Right.
risk, and you don't
Yeah.
want to be out there alone, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need a lot of different perspectives when we're making those
Mhm.
decisions. One of the things that I learned early on stepping out of my residency was that physicians felt meetings were wastes of time. I heard it over and over again. I was excited to be invited onto committees,
Right?
but all my colleagues are saying it's going to be a waste of time. And I think part of that was because they didn't feel like their input was
Mm.
heard,
Mhm.
right? And sometimes that's about, we feel like we have the best answer.
Mhm.
And I think everybody in that room where the decision is being made needs to understand that all of those perspectives are important.
Mhm.
And one of the perspectives that's important, this is often left out, is the perspective of the patient,
Yes. Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think that is really important. All of those perspectives, voice is, that's my thing,
Mhm.
is voice, right? The voice of having a diverse set of stakeholders for that voice, the ones
Mhm.
that are, again, impacted by the decision and have expertise in the solution. Those are the people that need to be at the
Mhm.
table.
Mhm. Can you think of a project where you brought all those folks to the table and it made a big difference that you were very proud of?
Yeah, I think so, for one thing, when I was involved in the Mankato Area Smoke-Free Coalition, we had, sorry, you're probably going to hear the dog in the background.
Oh, I love
Um,
it.
she wants to go outside, but I'll try to ignore her if I can. Might not be able to. So one of the things, I'm just going to jump up, but I'll be right back, and I can hear you, and we can still talk.
Oh,
So I think
please. Yeah. No, I
the
love it.
Mankato,
The
the
dog
Man-
wants to go out in the snow.
right.
It's very cold in Minnesota right now.
It's above freezing, so that's
Oh
why
my
they're
goodness. My
going out. Yeah.
little poodle would never.
It's almost 40 degrees out. So
And that is warm.
yeah, so Mankato Area Smoke-Free Coalition, we made sure to have a lot of different voices.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until some of the physicians in my facility where I was working came to me and said, "Do you need help on this?" "Yes, I've been
Mm.
asking you for help for months. Thank you, please." That's when we were able to turn things around and get
Yeah,
things,
yeah.
accomplished. So that was one example. Um, Others in terms of, within the healthcare organization, like I led engagement and well-being for a healthcare organization. And when we were most effective, it was because we had the voices on the front line involved in, what we were going to, how we were going to impact well-being.
Yeah.
For sure.
I think there's just so much power. The relationship with the physician population and the patient population. I mean, there's some parts of it that are so beautiful and so powerful and incredible, but I do think it needs a lot of repair in terms of seeing each other as not just as humans. I think we've made some progress on that maybe, but seeing each other as powerful entities, right? That you're on really the same side of what you're trying to fight for here in medicine, and
Right.
that patients don't want the physician to be this perfect robot who only makes perfect decisions all the time, and I think for the physician side to see patients, there's so much power in bringing them along with what you're trying to do in medicine, right? And
Absolutely.
the fandom of physicians, as somebody who's like the president of the fan club of medicine, right? I think that's an underutilized resource, right? Like if we think even about, TV and culture, there's so much media around hospitals and doctors, and we're fascinated by it. And I don't know that the clinical side takes that fascination and turns it into change necessarily, or sees it as a form of power. It's interesting. I wonder if it will start to change. Things are always changing.
Yeah. It's interesting because I don't know how many people have watched The Pit.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they're taking a little different approach. I've been impressed with how well they've covered so many of the issues that bubble up in the emergency department. This season, one of the docs is really struggling with their charts. They didn't show that last season. There's the issue of, having a colleague struggling with, drugs and alcohol and, you know, diagnoses that you miss, or I mean, there's just so many. And the doc that wants to spend so much time at the bedside but doesn't have the time to spend at the bedside, and there's just so many issues that they are doing such a great job covering. And I feel like that show is really, that could help with change, because it's showing so many different perspectives, nursing perspective and the patient perspective and the physician perspective and the trainee perspective. And I'm really enjoying how they're covering that.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. Well, tell me about, how did you avoid burnout yourself? Because as a person who is working very hard as a clinician and working very hard in medicine, but also working very hard in trying to drive culture change and leadership change, and heavy is the head that wears the crown here. How did you prevent yourself from just going too far over the edge?
Yeah, I knew from the start that I didn't want to lose myself to, seeking the almighty dollar, to be crass about it. I really didn't feel so. I was fortunate that my first job that I stepped into, we got to choose how much we wanted to work. And of course, right out of residency, I'm needing to study for my board exam. And so right away, I had the excuse of, I'm not going to work, 200 hours a month. Let's start with 120 so that I still have time to study my boards. And I never really was full-time the way some of my colleagues were full-time, and some of my colleagues were spending 4 minutes with each patient, taking history, doing physical, and making a decision about what they were going to order, and that's not how I operated ever. So So this is a little tangential, but one of the things that I recognized was that I enjoyed, I'm not sure that's quite the right word, but I got something out of seeing psych patients in the emergency
Mm.
department,
Mm-hmm.
and they were often avoided by my
Mm.
colleagues.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they kept showing up in my pile instead of their pile, which I didn't mind.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I kind of am, I'm reasoning out that one of the reasons that might be is that I felt like I could do something for those
Yeah.
patients. So there's empathy where you're feeling the pain
Mm.
of someone else. And then there's compassion, which is where you can feel like you're able to do something for someone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like I was able to step out of the room and feel my humanity when I came. I did. There was just this sense of, yeah, I really connected with that person,
Yeah.
and I was able to help if it's only for listening. You know, where I
Mm-hmm.
first practiced, it was a college town. So there were a lot of, you know, there's a lot of suicidal ideation with breakups, you know,
Yeah.
things like that. And if I could just listen to that person, I think that was helpful.
Oh, I love that.
Um,
I mean, it
and I
makes
don't
perfect
know
sense
that
because you
others
loved
can
the
do that,
crisis.
right?
Yeah, uh-huh. I think that's
Yeah.
such a fascinating pattern because what you said about why you wanted to get into the emergency department of people being at this moment of transformation, crisis.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Who more in crisis than somebody in a mental health crisis, right?
Right.
Wow.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Wow. And so you found a lot of joy with those patients.
Yeah.
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 Mhm.
Yeah. And
Wow.
like I said, I'm not sure joy is quite the word,
Yeah.
but
Interest, intrigue.
it was being in touch with my own humanity, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's part of the resilience for you was that you felt like you were doing the work. You were
Right.
contributing.
Yep. And that gave back to me, right?
Yeah.
It hopefully did something for them as well as gave back
Yeah.
to me in the process. Because I don't know, well, so they did a functional MRI study about empathy versus compassion.
Yes.
And when people are empathizing, they're feeling the pain center in the brain lights up on a
Mhm.
functional MRI. When they can move that to compassion, where
Right.
they feel like they're, you know, doing something for the other person,
Yeah.
pleasure centers in the brain light up. So it gives back when you can, I think, be aware of, am I empathizing? Am I just feeling the pain of
Mm,
this person? Or am I doing something for this
right.
person? And that's giving back to you as well.
Right. I'm actually preparing a talk now about different types of suffering with a physician
Mm,
out of Stanford. And he talks a lot about that as well, of the difference between very painful situations, but very painful situations that have meaning or that you can
mm-hmm,
extract meaning from. It's very
mm-hmm,
Buddhist, right? And that you can't avoid the pain, but if you have meaning from it,
right.
suddenly it's not as painful, right? Or you're
Right.
able
Well,
to bring through
it's
it.
the fifth
Mhm.
stage of grief, right? Is
Mhm.
meaning. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful.
So
Yeah. Oh, I love that so much. So tell me then about how this turned into HRC, because
yeah.
talking about creating meaning and creating action, tell me about that.
Mm-hmm. So I got introduced to Denise Wiseman, and
Oh.
then she introduced me to other folks that were working on what could we do with this. There seems to be a need to bring people together who want to make a change in healthcare, right? And part of my fellowship had been an introduction to what's called art of hosting. And in art of hosting, I learned about the two loops model of change.
Mm.
And in the two loops model of change, you have an old system that has a has a life arc, right?
Mm.
And when the system starts to, the arc turns downward, that's the system starting to fail those it's supposed to serve.
Mm.
And if that were healthcare, what this two loops model argues is that people start stepping out of that dying system and
Mhm.
saying, how can I, usually how can I, or maybe a tiny we,
Uh-huh.
make a change that's going to benefit, better serve, the
Yeah.
patients, the people in who are giving the healthcare as well. What can I do that would improve healthcare, right?
Mm.
There are people stepping out, these change makers, right?
Mhm.
And in the two loops model of change, it basically it argues that if you can identify those change makers, if you can connect them to other change makers and
Mhm.
support their work and illuminate their work, then that can accelerate this formation of a new system
Mm.
that is now coming up, a new way of doing the care of health, if you will.
Mhm.
And so I introduced the folks that really wanted to do something about that to this two loops model. And that really helped us gel what
Mm.
Healthcare Reinvention Collaborative would be, which is a
Mhm.
impact network. So it's a developing impact network, which, the purpose of which is to identify and connect and support and illuminate these
Mm.
change makers, or as we affectionately call them, ruckus makers,
Record
in
maker.
healthcare.
Right. Keep them going. Be like somebody
Yeah.
hearing you. This is
Yeah.
important work. Keep it
Right,
going.
because it's
Yeah.
very isolating work, right? When
Mhm.
you're kind of stepping out. And sometimes there's people within the system still who are
Yeah.
trying to make those changes, which I felt was my function for 4.5 years when I was leading engagement and well-being.
Mhm.
Um, and, there's a role for people within the healthcare to do that, but there's also a role for people outside of the healthcare system.
Mhm.
And HRC is really working to bring all of those people and companies together and say, what kind of transformational collaboration
Mhm.
could we support and illuminate so that this change for a better system can happen?
Right, because you don't know when the spark will happen that makes all that click together, right? You're like sort of
Right.
planting all those bulbs everywhere.
Yeah. And and HRC doesn't argue that they know the solution
Mhm.
to healthcare. Um, they believe that there's collective wisdom
Yeah.
in all these ruckus makers, and how can we channel that? How can we help channel that so that that new system can emerge? Right, it's an emergent process,
Mm.
um, to so that we can better take care of people.
Oh, I love that. What are you seeing? Any points of light that are your favorite right now out there? I mean, on my side, I'm always fascinated with the direct primary care movement of these physicians who are just like, I'm done with it. I'm out. I'm going to go over here and run a fantastic practice. It's going to be $100 a month, and like, that's it. I'm going to go do it. And I'm just going to
Hmm.
opt out of the whole system. I think it's a fascinating protest and it's getting a lot of new attention right now. Any
Yeah.
other people kind of stepping out like in that two loop model that you think are especially cool?
Yeah, I'm really excited about DPC, also the
Mhm.
direct primary care. I've had coaching clients
Mhm.
who I have coached from being within the healthcare system and just crispy fried, burned out, and figuring out they need to be out but not knowing what to do exactly, and doing fellowships and creating their own DPC, and I've been able to coach them along the way, and it's exhilarating. My
Mm.
only concern there is, what I'm hearing is that a lot of people have health insurance besides paying on top of that health insurance for a DPC. And
Mm.
I just don't know what that's going to look like
Mhm.
with the wealth gap in our society just getting
Mm.
larger and
Yeah.
larger and larger. But I think there's a seed there that we need, there's a thread there that
Mhm.
we need to keep pulling on. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of excited about that, like
Yeah.
you are. Yeah.
it was heading, starting to look at like a capitated Medicaid paying for DPC model. And now everything is like a little, we don't know.
Yeah.
But it
We
does,
don't know.
the maths on that in an interesting way. Yeah.
Mm.
Any other big reflections on this incredible career? You seem to be such a person. I don't get a sense from you of like any frustration that, you could have done something differently. I mean, you're such a grounded person, I feel. But you have seen the world change in your career, right? And for good and bad, right? People are not smoking inside of restaurants anymore. A lot of progress has been made, but there's still a lot of work to do.
Yeah. Boy, yeah, it's such a complex question, right? In some ways, the disruption that's happening right now in our country maybe seeds for something good happening. I feel like sometimes those of us who want to see society progress can be complacent with a more progressive administration versus we're together and we're finding each other now with a different kind of administration, right?
There has been an energy this year that has not existed before. The caliber of conversations I'm sure you're having as well, of people saying, yeah, that's right. Like things were not working. And now there's this massive forest fire, but I'm kind of excited to see what emerges from the ashes of this, right? Can this be a healing fire in a way, right? It's a stressful time.
And I'm in Minnesota, as you know.
Yeah.
And so that piece is very real to me. And people are coming out of the woodworks, honestly. And it's interesting to me that some of the same things that are happening in Minnesota were happening elsewhere, but for some reason, the light is being shown brighter on what's happening in Minnesota, and I think, I don't know, I think that's because we are more willing to speak out against injustice, perhaps. Yeah. So
it's the Betsy Tacy Tibb effect, right? Those of us who I've never been to Minnesota in my entire life, but I grew up reading and have read from my daughter all those Betsy Tacy Tibb books. And to me, Mankato is heaven on earth, right? From what I read. And so I think there is something really special about Minnesota and its position in the world. And it's really showing the rest of the country kind of, oh, these are interesting techniques. These are interesting ways to talk about these things. These are interesting ways to raise your voice, right? I mean, what a gift you guys are giving to us. A very painful gift, but a gift, I feel like, to the rest of the country.
Yeah, I think there's been some pretty intentional efforts to be creative in our nonviolent demonstrations, and so that's encouraging, I think, and hopefully that can help others as well. So
tell me, we're about to wrap up here, but tell me, what are you reading or being inspired by or listening to, and what's next? We were just talking about your dear mom who lived to 100. So we know that you have a lot of time ahead of you to continue making change. So what are you reading? What are you listening to? And what might be coming next?
Yeah. So trying to think of what I've got. I've actually got a Grisham novel on my that I just started.
The hero.
But I tend to read things that others recommend to
Mhm.
me. And so, one of the books that influenced me greatly was Going Horizontal
Mm.
by Samantha Slade, which
Mhm.
talks about, here, let's see, do I have it here? Yeah.
Uh,
Which talks about a decision-making
Oh, I have to read this.
process. And
Mhm.
that's a really great, it's creating a non-hierarchical organization, one practice at a time is the subtitle to that.
This.
So that's a very influential book recently for me. The book about impact networks also. I'll
You're not slowing down.
pull that one up here.
Oh, I
So
love that.
Impact Networks
Hmm.
by David Ehrlichman, of course. Both of those are really influence the work that I do. Um, and I'm mostly trying to be present with my family. I've got several grandchildren and a couple great grandchildren,
Wow.
and then being active with what's going on here in Minnesota of late, for sure.
Mm-hmm. You have your hands full, very much.
Yeah.
Well, tell us, how can people find you? Because as you said, you are still coaching. You're
Yeah.
wondering, we have, I think, the URL we'll put down here, but tell us, what's the best way for people to reach out and get your wisdom?
Yeah. They can, that's my website there,
Mhm.
and they can reach out to me via email as well,
Mhm.
which is ihc.dawn@gmail.com. That's the easiest one. And yeah, just contact me. I'm happy to help. Oh, thanks. Look at that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk and see what we can do together.
I'm so grateful for you. I'm so grateful for HRC. I feel, don't often get imposter syndrome, but when I got invited to come debate all these prominent physicians about the future of medicine,
Well,
it
we
was a
loved
wonderful
having you.
challenge.
Oh, it was great having you.
I
Yeah,
thought it was great
absolutely.
fun, and I've made so many new friends through that organization, and just have really enjoyed. It's helped me actually, even with the new book that I'm writing, and thinking about. I was invited to a kind of an Oxford-style debate about should healthcare be local or more national, and it was so fun to pick that side. I was on the side local, and just go in that Oxford style, like 100% it has to be local, and here's why, like debate style. And so it's been
Yeah.
something fun with the new book about money in medicine. I have a writer
Mm,
who is taking the negative and saying, can I argue that healthcare is not too expensive? It's a
wow.
fascinating way to think about it. It's really created a lot of challenging perspectives, right? Of like, oh,
Yeah.
actually, if you think about it this way and you think about it this way, there's,
Interesting.
yeah, it's really fun. So I'm very grateful. Hopefully, some of that second loop energy has carried over into my work and into the program, and it's wonderful to see it continuing to grow. So
Cool. Well, I'd love to hear more about what you're doing because I really appreciate you.
yeah, well, we got to continue the work. You have teed us up for a lot of success. And hopefully, you get to be in your cozy house in Minnesota with your dogs and your grandkids, and you get to watch all these seeds that you planted start to
Yeah.
spring up, right? I do feel like
Yeah.
we're at the edge of hopefully something very interesting and good.
Yes. I
Yeah.
hope I get to see it.
Yay. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dawn, for being with us today. What a
Thank you, Emily.
just incredible way to start the week. I feel so grounded and ready to go be
Good.
resilient leader in healthcare, and hope
Yay.
everybody else who watched along with us feels the same. So thank you so much, Dawn.
Yeah. Thank you, Emily. It was great being here with you.